that outlines what the committees will influence and how. And we've also been working together to develop a vision for the project. The technical committee has consensus around that should really not reinvent the wheel, but start from the visions already established along the corridor and rather synthesize those. And it should be people and community focused, recognizing it is a transportation project, but that should be the North Star. A few areas where Metro has provided additional feedback, Metro staff, we're excited about the affordable housing, but also interest in supporting community stability since this is such a major investment. Lifting up the 2040 growth concept and the blueprint for compact development in that vision, and aligning, of course, with the regional transportation plan and our goals for equitable transportation, mobility options, thriving economy, safe system, and climate actions and resilience, as well as supporting the regional transit strategy and climate smart strategy I already mentioned. And Jennifer, would you like to provide a little bit of information on some of the feedback that the state has provided as well?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Allie. Yeah. So from ODOT's perspective, we've used the established vision and work that we've done in the planning documents that I mentioned previously, the Oregon State Rail Plan and our Tier 1 environmental impact statement and record of decision. So that input into the vision was that Oregon will have a safe, efficient, and commercially viable rail system that services its businesses, travelers, and communities through private resources leveraged and as needed by strategic public investments. We're also providing input around partnership, collaboration, and communications, having a connected system, system investments and preservation, funding, finance, and investment principles, system safety, and preserving and enhancing the quality of life along with economic development. And so both ODOT and Metro have participated in stakeholder interviews and committee discussions. I think, Allie, you were going to go over that information.
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. Yeah, a little bit more on some of those discussions. We've talked about the work plan together, and that's really about the process and work that's needed to lay the groundwork to achieve the outcomes in the established by the program initiation work and established by the MOU. Some of the feedback that we've provided is around the engaging the Oregon side, both the region and the state and communities within it. Also about the community organizations that should be engaged, who should be at the table and when. Also around the community benefits that should be achieved, and then also setting us up for the partnerships towards governments, thinking about the coordinating entity. We've talked about the engagement plan as well, emphasizing the need for engagement of regional partners early on in the process and having representation from community, labor, environment, mobility, and business organizations, as well as recommending establishing a community advisory committee as in another committee to stand up as part of the process. And then we've also talked about funding as well. The framework for the future that Jason already mentioned does talk about some strategies for that based on federal opportunities and especially new ones. And we've also encouraged us to look at the example from the Interstate Bridge Replacement Plan, and then also provided some information about when we get into implementation of the engagement plan, as well as complementary investments where there might be opportunities for Metro grants to play a piece in that puzzle. And then finally, we've also been working on a couple of different items for the Corridor ID program, both the expression of interest and proposal. Jennifer mentioned a little bit already the connection with Amtrak Cascades. That's definitely another important connection that is in our RTP transit vision as well as the Oregon State Rail Plan. And so it's something we've definitely been very supportive of. And so Jennifer is going to talk a little bit more about how the joint expression of interest was crafted.
So the joint expression of interest, so know that the ultra high-speed ground transportation, that work is not intended to replace Amtrak Cascades. That is co-funded by WashDOT and ODOT. So the plan is for it to be an additional travel option. It would serve ridership through connections to other travel modes. So the Amtrak Cascades trains could connect smaller cities to the ultra high-speed system. They might even share the same new tracks. We just don't know at this point. So WashDOT and ODOT worked on joint expression of interest language to ensure that the ultra high speed and Amtrak Cascade work together with any high speed rail, and that is supporting intercity rail system connectivity. But we don't know yet if we will extend it to Salem or down to Eugene yet. That's yet to be determined for the ultra high speed. But we are working together with WashDOT to determine how best to approach that. And Jason, I don't know if you had any additional information you wanted to add to that.
Yes, I do. And I think the next few slides will cover that. Are we okay to go to the next few slides?
Yes, thank you, Jason.
Yep, great. Next slide, please. Thanks, Jennifer and Ali. Really appreciate the collaboration from Metro and ODOT as well. So you heard me talk about what we've done in the past, what we're doing now, and Jennifer sets this conversation up for the next 4 slides, talking about what we'll be doing in the future. So as Ali and Jennifer had mentioned, we are pursuing federal funding through a very brand new program out of the Federal Railroad Administration. That Corridor ID Development Program was recently established by the federal agency. We have submitted an expression of interest, again, jointly with Oregon and Washington. And then the FRA has put out a 45-minute webinar. So there's information available, but we also have questions that we've asked and have been coordinating with FRA staff. We are waiting for a notice of funding opportunity to be released sometime this month. The main source of funding is intended to be the Corridor ID program and the Fed-State partnership, and that is shown in the next slide here. But before we transition to that next slide, again, just want to emphasize that as we go through this program, the importance and the need to also continue to develop Amtrak Cascades, advance that alongside ultra high speed. There is no system in the world that has a high speed system without that backbone, that intercity service that is really complementary to any high speed rail service. So we have the same views and position on that. And so it's very important for us to continue to make improvements on Cascades alongside ultra high speed. Next slide, please. So what we know out of the Federal Railroad Administration's CID or Corridor ID program is they've laid out stages and steps. For ultra high speed, we're starting at the very left-hand side of this arrow chart. Like I said, the Fed-State partnership is the primary federal funding bucket that we're targeting. And in order for us to be able to access that, we have to go through this CID step. The next slide goes into additional details with regards to what FRA is looking for in terms of commitment, timing, et cetera. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So again, out of the webinar, we know that the stages or the steps are 3 as identified in this slide. Step 1, after submitting an application and being accepted into the program, essentially sets us up for a development of an SDP, the initial scoping and program initiation of that. You then step into step 2, which is the actual implementation of the service development plan, again for the corridor between Portland and Vancouver, BC. Your commitments and funding that you are expected to receive from the FRA also begin to ramp up. Going back to step 1, entities accepted into the program are to receive a nominal amount of seed money, $500K from the federal government. But again, the contributions ramp up as you step through steps 2 to 3. I think this information it is a good path. It's very informative for us. And like I said, with the consulting team, we are beginning to develop the early information that's needed for this application, even though the notice of funding availability has not been released quite yet. So what does that mean? Next slide, please. What we know is the program is looking to at least answer three things at a minimum. One is a description and demonstration of the corridor characteristics. What are those key geographic travel markets? The second demonstration that we're preparing for is program readiness. How do we demonstrate to the Federal Railroad Administration that we are indeed ready to step into this program? And if not, step in a more faster pace, steps 1 to step 2. Lastly, the program establishes 14 selection criteria, and the team has been looking at that already to again prepare for that application. I believe there's one other slide, and we've thrown a lot of information at you. This slide is just a reference to the webpage that we have for additional information. If you'd like to see some of the previous studies, that could be accessed through the web link here. But we've thrown a lot of information at you, and Ali, I'm going to hand it back to you or to Margie.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jennifer. At this time, President Peterson, we'd love to take questions and comments from council members.
Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated, Allie and Jennifer and Jason, much appreciated. I guess I just want to let the council know what I have articulated in these meetings to make sure that we are looking at the things that Oregon once looked at. The first one, I think, was you saw come back in the almost one of the first slides that Jason presented on the values, and that is that anything coming into the Portland region comes into North Portland. And so we want to make sure that we do not have the impact of basically a highway right away coming through any part of our community, and any of the negative impacts that would result from that. Second is that this is about a station planning for us at the forefront, and secondly, about a connection to BC, because that is a huge amount of people that could be potentially coming in and out of, and a huge amount of potential development. It is transit-oriented development on steroids. It's a mega transit-oriented development. And most places around the world are using these to connect high tech, to connect education, to connect medical research, right? So it's not just about retail and housing, affordable housing. It's actually about connecting industries and making it very easy up and down this corridor to connect those industries. So the third point I would just like to completely harp on Jason, and he's heard me say it a gazillion times. Oregon knows Oregon. And I don't think that, and my stand at this point is that we don't want to just be a participating agency, we want to be in partnership. And so as we move through this as partners, the work that needs to occur in Oregon in the metro region needs to be fronted by the city of Portland and Metro, not WashDOT or a consulting company. It needs to be fronted by us, even if it's in joint partnership with WashDOT. And so right now we don't have the funds to start a conversation here. And so I think that's what's worrying me the most, is that as we start this, I don't want to get too far ahead of the project. I don't want to get too far ahead of our partners, but I do think that we have to figure out how we're going to start a conversation on this end so that it's not a surprise when money is awarded to WashDOT, consultants are hired, and suddenly people are surprised. I think that could have a negative impact on positive conversations about the benefits and costs. So that's where I have been in these conversations. I much appreciate all the work WashDOT and ODOT have put into getting us to this point, and much appreciate really the big picture ideas that are coming out of Washington that we could potentially benefit from. So thank you. Councilors, questions? Overwhelmed Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting. Make sure my mic is on, I guess it is. I've long been a supporter of higher speed rail in the area, and it takes 2.5 hours about to go by train from Eugene to Portland, and 3.5 to go to Seattle, which is slower than cars. And the only thing I point out on that one slide, which shows that air travel is an hour, air travel is closer to 3 hours because of all the lead in and lead out times and the distances. That's slightly misleading. But I guess my question really is, and I've traveled on high-speed rail in Europe, and I think it's a great thing. And as I pointed out, you always have a supplementary, you have regios and you have local, and so they have a complete system. So you can't just do one and ignore the others. I agree with that. But my question is, and I'm assuming the definition of ultra-high-speed rail is 250 miles an hour, whereas high-speed rail is around 150 to 180 miles per hour, which is what most of the high-speed rail moves at in Europe, and I believe also in Britain and Europe and also Japan. My understanding is that the extra costs regarding safety and regarding also the ability to stop and service additional stops, the costs go up higher as you get from high speed to ultra high speed. So why are we looking at ultra high speed? What are the benefits of ultra high speed as opposed to just high speed, say 170 miles an hour, 180 miles an hour, which seems to be a much more common world speed. So I'd like to, and will we be looking at the economic benefits and the costs in the long term of high speed versus ultra high speed for this kind of system? I think there's some real problems with ultra high speed just from a physics standpoint.
Who wants to take that? Jason?
I'll take that. Councilor, thank you for the question. That is a fantastic question. We have not done the technical analysis to understand where that break point is between higher speed and ultra high speed. I think you're right in the sense that, it'd be great for us to be able to run at 180 miles an hour within our existing system. But I do need to point out some of the constraints around the infrastructure right now. The current system is owned by BNSF and UP. The existing track has a lot of curves. So ideally, we would like to be able to run at 180, but the limitations on that infrastructure doesn't allow us to operate at 180 safely. And so we are looking at those options. But again, like I said, being able to complement and move both systems forward is our goal, and it's about the connectivity, not the speed. You're absolutely right.
Thanks. Councilor Lewis and then Craddock.
Awesome. I want to thank y'all for a nice presentation and report. I'm supportive of this general direction. I guess I want to weigh in from the southern part of the region that going to Salem would be great. It helps make sure that there's a whole different segment of folks served. I also think that heading south, you might be able to loop in some more manufacturing opportunities in the future. I would like to press folks to reach out to the ports. I don't know the landscape in Washington State, obviously, but I think Port of Portland should be brought in, particularly in light of the France short haul flight ban. I could see us getting to similar type of situation where we want to see people, if they have long flights that aren't serviced out of PDX, get encouraged to train to Seattle instead of fly. So please keep in mind that kind of future intermodal travel as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll just mention that Jennifer and I have provided a list of Oregon stakeholders that we would like to see included, and the ports are definitely on there. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Councilor Craddock.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to have this discussion brought to the Metro Council today. Thank you, President Peterson. It's just something that's really important to me. And thank you, Ali and Jennifer and Jason. I'm just so pleased that you are working together and looking at this for the future. So really, really glad to have this be involved in this discussion. So I guess my thoughts on this is I'm all for what you're doing. I don't really have anything to say about the specificity of it, but it's more about where Oregon needs to go next. And I would love to see this discussion elevated in the state, particularly with our state legislature. We need to get some champions that are at the legislature to help us with this and begin to make this really important. I would love, as Councilor Lewis mentioned, I think she, if we're going to be focusing on bringing this high speed, ultra high speed to Portland, why not take it right on down to Eugene? And we should have that conversation all at the same time. I think Oregon is under planning where we want to go, under dreaming where we need to go. We're looking at, how do we fix up the current rail we have now and make it a little bit better? That isn't going to do the trick. We need to dream bigger and go bigger. And so I would love it. I hope this Metro Council will be a champion for this in the next few years to really have this become a state discussion, a state legislature discussion, and get our governor on board and have this be a really important part of where the state is going to go in the future. So this is not something minor. This is something that could really make a difference, not only in our economy, as Jason was describing, and I think you said Microsoft is one of the first leaders in this. This is really about our economy, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and just making it a better place to live. And so to me, this is an extremely important project to focus on. And Oregon should definitely be a part of it, but thinking bigger than the mediocre effort we're making right now. I think our stakeholders have to be our industries that we have in Oregon. We need to bring them on board right now. They need to help lead instead of push back on us when we have these big infrastructure packages. They need to be at the table in an agreement and contributing a lot of money to the plan. And I'm thinking of the Columbia Sportswears, the Nikes, the Intels, all those companies that Oregon has all the way down through Eugene. They need to be here, and because this is for them. And it is addition to the residents that live in our region, in our state. I hope I appreciate Metro Council President Peterson's concern and already thinking about the impact this could have on North Portland, because that part of Portland has had significant impact over the last 50, 60 years. Regarding transportation has made a pretty negative impact on it. So I appreciate your interest in making sure that we really think about that before we get too far along. Possibly a tunnel. Maybe this is the time for a tunnel. And that could really then really not have as much of a negative impact as maybe having this big rail that comes down through the middle of somebody's residential area that you can't cross because it goes so freaking fast, nobody can even come near it. So I'm just really pleased that we're having this discussion, but I think we need to elevate it in Oregon. It needs to be one of the most important projects that we work on. It needs to be led by the state legislature. It needs to be led by our industry, and they need to be at the table championing this and helping put money into this. And so I guess I'm challenging the Metro Council, since I'll be leaving it in just a couple weeks, that this, I think, the best things you could do the next few years is take this on and develop that interest and that and the commitment from our state and be the champions of this. Could be a great project that this council could take on. So thank you. So glad you were here today. I will be championing this from the audience. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Jason, I think you just found our Oregon resident champion to put on a committee.
Absolutely.
And pass retirement from the Metro Council. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Huang, and then Gonzalez, and then Nolan.
Thank you, and thanks for the thought-provoking presentation. Always exciting stuff to hear about high-speed transit. I have two questions. I guess first is just, how does the regulatory framework and decision-making work with, across borders, across international borders? Is it done by treaty, or like how is that done? I noticed, the governments that were participating, Canadian side had a intergovernment department, and it didn't seem like we had that on our side, and we had a lot more jurisdictions involved. So I guess, yeah, like what is decision making and dealing with that gonna look like? And then my second question, just a technical question, is I saw on the slides there was a projected 6 million metric tons reduction in GHGs, and is that like over the lifespan of a project, or is it annually? Like what is the scale of that projected reduction? Thanks.
Ali, I guess I'll take that on. Let me start with the governance question. Great question, Councillor. I would say there's not a lot of examples for a governance structure for a project like this. Again, we're going across 2 states and 2 countries, right? Washington, Oregon, and BC. I know what we do in Washington for environmental analysis, NEPA. I'm not quite sure what the Canadians doing for their part of the environmental analysis, right? And so needing to streamline those types of work streams, really important for us to do. That relates to the governance, and that's part of decision making. And to President Peters' point, the need to be able to kind of be in control of Oregon's destiny, right? We believe that we also need to empower entities like the state of Oregon, as well as Metro, to be able to lead and participate in that decision making. That governance structure is going to be very important, perhaps even more important than finding and financing the project. Those decisions are going to be very heavy decisions to be making, and we need to make sure that we get that structure right. We're not at a point where we can decide, the fair cost, where that's running, et cetera. But in order to get us going, to get us started, we need to think through very, very thoughtfully and intelligently how to best set this up. Unfortunately, there are no examples in North America for that. However, there are good examples for us to be looking at, lessons learned, best practices, and also our analysis and looking at what do we need in terms of rules and regulations to be able to set up this coordinating entity? What do we need to do perhaps first to be able to enter into some of these negotiations and conversations? So we're doing what we can. We're looking across, in fact, beyond the country, but globally. What examples and case studies can we look at to help shape and form our governance structure? And that's going to be very important.
And if I follow up on that real quick, was there some consideration of phasing the projects that you do potentially just the US side first? Or I guess what's the rationale for doing, the 3 segments internationally, including that segment as well, like all in one planning process?
Yeah, I think we haven't gotten to a point where, which goes first, Seattle to Vancouver, Seattle to Portland. We haven't looked at that quite yet. I think that is a task we'll need to do. But one thing that we've learned from the California example is it's important to put in front of the public the progress in the work that's happening, right? So if you concentrate the work in just one area, and then the other ends of the bookends aren't seeing anything until years down the line, but that's not necessarily a good way for us to be doing this. So we're beginning, again, like I said, to understand what are the best practices, lessons learned to be able to set this up right. Your second question with regards to 6 million metric tons, again, that is a very high level planning level estimate based on the trade-off and concepts that we had conducted in the past. That number is going to change. It's going to change once we identify a technology. At this point, we are still very much technology agnostic. However, the federal government has expressed interest in wanting to support projects that are proven in technology. But at this point, with regards to ultra high speed, we're looking at your conventional high speed rail system. That's your Japanese Shinkansen, French TGV systems, maglev, as well as Hyperloop. Now, you don't have a lot of information, relatively speaking, for the maglev and Hyperloop systems, but at this point, we are technology agnostic. But again, just to make a fine point, that 6 million metric tons, high level, is probably going to change depending on technology, alignment, et cetera.
And Jason, is that over 1 year or over the life of the project?
I don't recall. I believe it's out to 2040 or 2050. I can double check and get back to the council.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I say a quick note about the Cascadia corridor? Because I'm a big believer in doing the planning work from Salem or Portland all the way up to British Columbia, Vancouver. And the Cascadia, I've been part of many Cascadia panels. I know President Peterson has too. We share the same economy. We share the same values. We share the same ports and port interactions. We share the same environment that we live in. And there's a lot of synergy there. And I think if you talk to anybody who does trucking on the I-5 corridor, they would tell you they go up and down that corridor all day long. And so I understand, Councilor Wong, your question was kind of about construction, but I think particularly in the planning phase, it's important for us to have a joint vision that ties us all together, that we can articulate to the public and stakeholders. And then when we get to kind of the more defined planning and construction phases, as Jason was saying, then it's time to talk about, it'll have to be phased in some way. It's important we articulate that vision. So, anyway, go ahead, Councilor. I'll go back to President Pearson.
Thanks. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson, and gracias to all the folks that have come in from north of the Columbia River to spend some time with us on this project. Definitely something that, I think many of us have been tracking and thinking about in terms of, that Cascadia ecosystem and connecting, our regions and looking at a global context is incredibly important. And the framing of future economic competitiveness is one that really resonates with me. And looking at just unlocking our labor pool, our labor talent, and all those amazing benefits. I also think about the kind of the double-edged sword of that tremendous amount of access. But the first thing that I want to kind of comment on is, I think the first thing would be with this seismic investment. Thinking through the kind of the comprehensive. I'm almost thinking like a 2040 plan, but for Cascadia in terms of the amount of TOD and the amount of city and community building that we'd be able to do around these stations is just, to me, feels like an amazing opportunity. And kind of obviously layering on affordable housing and kind of the modern kind of urban environment that we would want to inspire with this kind of project. I'm kind of hearing that, but I just want to, contribute a little grain of salt to the mound in that sense. I'm also thinking, I know that we're so early, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is community benefits agreements, kind of on the workforce side. And the construction careers pathway work that Metro has done. I know the Metro staff is really well acquainted with that. But also, with a project like this, I'm thinking like the amount of opportunities that arise, in my opinion, with procurement and small businesses, medium-sized businesses, just the opportunity to continue to cultivate that. I think looking at this project through the lens of all boats rise. With this investment, I'm having that level of intentionality. It makes it easier, I think, and more palpable for communities to buy into that, especially since, I've heard some feedback from community leaders around, Metro's involvement with this project and, what feels like something high in the sky, and also recognizing what our communities are living through right now, and that tension. But it doesn't feel so much more pie in the sky with the investment that Washington State has made into that. And so, I feel grateful for the leadership up north as well, in helping to get the ball rolling on this project. I think in terms of my kind of question for Metro staff, is I do feel nervous with that, with this multi-billion-dollar project, and frankly, what feels like a muscle on the Oregon side that we haven't really flexed a lot recently. We just finished the Division Transit project, which is it's good, and not without its hiccups. And we have 82nd and TV Highway. We have all these kind of projects happening on our highway system. I guess that's the big litmus test for us, where we'll need to we'll crank those projects out. But I think that tension of does our region have that capacity to take on that level of infrastructure? I would like to think yes, but I also see that for a place for Metro to take on a leadership role, like President Peterson mentioned, and trying to highlight the kind of investment that is needed and take that. So I see a tension, and I'm really curious to hear how Metro staff thinks we should address that, as well as the council. But there is a leadership opportunity there, and I'll stop my pontification, but appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts. Maybe it's a little bit all over the place, but this project is, if we're able to pull it off, it would just be massive for the region and the prosperity of generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. I feel like you tapped into my inner dialogue a little bit with your question, because we definitely work in a resource constrained environment, but I want to kind of come to the top in terms of, can this region do it? Can Metro do it? We can do anything. We do hard things. We built this light rail system. Metro was involved and led in many ways the planning of every single light rail line that we have today. We can do it. However, I will say we're trying to do a lot of big things right now. To your point, 2 big BRT lines. Hope to see Southwest Corridor back in play as well. That would be 3 lines going at once, which is a lot for Metro and TriMet. We are not staffed up for that. And I'll be honest, we don't have enough staff right now to lead in this effort. Ali is taking this on in addition to a very busy portfolio. She's leading an incredibly important high capacity transit line study that needed to be updated, in addition to a key role she plays on transit projects and transit planning throughout the region. So probably, if I was to guess, Ali, we have 0.1 or 0.2 of an FTE, to be honest, dedicated to this effort at this time. Not because it's not important, it's because it was not in our original work plan, and we've not really received a lot of direction to date from council, and we work in a resource constrained environment. So my hope would be that, the Oregon legislature steps up and invests in it. That certainly would help ODOT. Potentially we could do an IGA with ODOT in that situation, or we receive federal grants, and Metro was part of that federal grant application to provide us the resources to get the staffing. I certainly would love to lead on this. I hope you understand my passion is maybe not as passionate as Councilor Craddock, but I'm certainly passionate about this and understand its importance. But we do have a resources problem at Metro, a capacity problem. So thank you for raising it.
Yeah, thanks, Margie. And if I could just continue on that, President, just real quick. I harken back to to our budget strategy session, where in planning, there was a small decrease in the horizon for the next few years. As the elected leaders of this agency I feel a responsibility in making sure that we're stepping up. And it's just a part of a broader conversation about, how our state approaches infrastructure, and just wanting to make it more of a top priority item. And I think we share that passion. But thank you, Margie, and everyone. I'll give it back to you, President.
Yeah, no, what I think I'm hearing out of this, your question, Counselor, is that we need to ask staff for some ways to find the funding so that we can continue to participate, not just we Metro, but we, the state, we, the city of Portland, because it would affect them the greatest, as because they're the station location, if that was what was chosen. But we do need, and I think I've articulated that to Jason to the point where I think he totally knows that my expectation is that the project helps fund some of that. Obviously, we need to step up with our own local money and look at the resources, whether they're at the state or at the regional level, and be able to staff up and have the region back us on being able to accomplish these big projects that we've taken on. So, agreed. So I think that's a JPAC conversation as well. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks for this enticing and kind of nibbles around the edges of this big project. The presentation was a bit overwhelming, but very encouraging. I want to underscore a couple of things that have been said. Lots of great comments made already by our colleagues. I really want to underscore the need for this to be a commitment that is defined by our community and built by our community and benefits through an intentional sharing of prosperity through this investment. Previous massive infrastructure projects, especially around surface transportation, have not met those goals. And we have an opportunity. Madam President, you've already alluded to it in the way you're representing us, but it's important for us to underscore that we are very intentional about how this is done and that it is a community benefit. It is not just an industrialist's project that accrues prosperity that rises to the top and ignores the people who build it and the people who make up the community. In particular, Councilor Gonzalez mentioned community benefit agreements. I underscore that as well. But design of the system and what it's intended to achieve should be really, really centered in broad prosperity and not just some tech billionaires. And the people who build it and get those short-term benefits, which are significant, should be of this community. But the long-term benefits of having the infrastructure and increasing the competitiveness should be intentionally designed to be broadly shared. Very exciting. I love big, complex infrastructure projects, and we have an opportunity to do this one really well. Madam President, you've done well in guiding it so far. Let us know what the council can do to help support you in that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilor Rosenthal, you have another question?
Actually, yeah, it's a question, I guess. It's a comment and a question. And it keys in on some comments that Councilor Nolan just made. Shared prosperity. It's possible to design a system such as this so that it primarily focuses on key nodes, such as Portland, Vancouver, and Seattle. Or it's possible to design a system such that it disperses the economic benefit, which was presented in one of the tables in terms of the economic growth, throughout the entire region, all the way from Eugene, all the way up to, including Burnaby and Tacoma and Kelso, Longview, and so forth. So to what extent, or does anybody have any ideas at this point in time on how that dichotomy is going to be looked at? We already have an air system which focuses development particularly on the key nodes, simply because airports are hard to build. But does anybody have any comments on the balance that this could achieve?
So if I can just weigh in and slowly close this out, Councilor, I think it was part of the presentation that was a little hard to understand the parallel tracks that are going on with the interurban higher speed. So a lot of work has already been done in the state of Washington. I might know the exact number off the top of my head, $700 million of improvements to get higher speed. And there's more to do on the interurban Amtrak cascades. So that's where that development would be focused, is getting from high-ish to higher. And that's where Oregon, Jennifer, if I'm correct, that's where you're now working, is going to higher on the Amtrak, high maybe, just high. I saw that shrug. High, at least higher speeds within the corridor. And then this would be in parallel, and most of what Jason presented is that not nationwide, internationally, the ultra or really high-speed rail needs that interurban to be able to feed into it. Otherwise, why are you doing high speed?
Okay.
Because you'd never get up to speed. You know.
So the answer is that it's in developing a multi-level approach,
Yep.
not trying to solve that issue with the higher speed.
That's right.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jason.
100% correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just doing check around the table. All right. With that, if there are no further questions, thank you all. We'll have more conversations. And Councilor Craddock, obviously, as you move forward working with staff, I think we have asked for this presentation to be next shared with JPACT. And start a larger, Allie's shaking her head, yes, good, a larger conversation so we can start having people think about how this region could use this investment to its advantage with the least amount of impacts to our community members. So, all right, well, thank you. Thank you all for the time and energy, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much. All right, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is Chief Operating Officer Communication, Marisa Madrigal. Good morning.
Good morning, President Peterson. Hello, Council. I hope that you're doing well. Just wanted to share that over the last few days, we've had 2 Metro-wide town halls that over 450 of our employees attended in one form or another. And that's probably a little underestimation because we know that some teams joined as a group on work sites. I want to thank President Peterson and Deputy Council President Lewis for attending and making opening remarks. I also really want to thank our staff for participating. What we did this time, which is a little bit different, is we really celebrated and shared the accomplishments of our Metro community over the last couple of years. And, you know, we have had town halls a lot over the pandemic, and most of the time they were about bad news. And we really wanted to take a minute to focus on the amazing accomplishments of our very, very diverse teams and very, very diverse departments. And at the end, we, instead of time for questions, we gave staff the time to give their own kudos for either their own teams or colleagues across the organization that had helped them. And if you had a chance to tune in, we did record them so you can still watch them, but it was truly incredible. We have just amazing teams and people who are doing meaningful work and also really aware of, you know, how their colleagues are helping them and taking the time to be grateful for that. So it was really awesome after all we've been through to have that experience. And I just thank you for providing an environment where we can have town halls like that. Additionally, before Thanksgiving, I had the pleasure of visiting the Portland Rotary Club and providing them an update on the work that's happening at Metro. I think it was really great to get out and talk to community. We got great feedback about our programs, and we were able to answer questions about how housing program, our solid waste system, the cleanup efforts that we're doing across the region. And so, we are happy to go out and meet with groups in your community to share that as well. So as you're out and about, if you run into a community group or a club that is interested in geeking out a little bit on Metro and hearing more about us, we are prepared to go out and talk to them. I think it's not always ever easy to understand what local government is and what we do. And because we're such a unique regional government that's directly elected, we kind of fall through the cracks. And I think it's a part of our civic duty to talk about how we're structured, what we do, and what we accomplish. So just wanted to share that with you. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the town hall I attended was great. I appreciate all the work that went into it. And thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis, for carrying the second one. Much appreciated. Councilors, any communication for today? Councilor Craddock and then Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you very much. Last night was the monthly Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation meeting, Region 1 Act, as it's dubbed. There were two items on the agenda. One was announcing the update on the STIF program, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. This is funds that go to support transit, and just identified the applications that have been received. These are for the 2023-2025 cycle. These are using formula funds to distribute the funds to the organizations that have applied. And so there's no decision that was made. It just reviewed some of the what has been applied in Region 1. In addition to that, was an update on the STIP, statewide. I got a transportation improvement plan, similar to our MTIP, and just identifying some of the projects that have been applied for. Very little money is going to be available for any state-run urban arterials. Focuses more on a little bit of funding that's going to urban arterials is for safety improvements. So most of the funding is going to be upgrading bridges in the state and in Region 1. So it wasn't a lot in this announcement for the metro area. They did give an update on the construction on the I-205 bridge, the Abernathy Bridge. They showed a short video. The machine that is being used to drill the holes into the bottom of the Willamette River, they've dubbed it the Oscar, the oscillator. And Oscar can drilling down 250 feet below the riverbed to be able to put for these supports that are going to support the widening of the Abernathy Bridge. And of course, it's also to improve the bridge for that earthquake that we might have in the future that could take it down. So hopefully this is going to be a bridge that's going to be resilient in a very in an earthquake that's pretty damaging. So that was pretty much the presentation last night. At least 8 members are leaving the Region 1 Act meeting. Many, similar to me, are leaving office. So there's going to be quite a few new people that will be appointed to the Region 1 Act. Most of all of Hood River's group is going to be brand new. And of course, there's some elected officials that have been involved in this from early on. And of course, Mayor Truax of Forest Grove, and then the mayor of Tigard is leaving. So it's going to be quite a bit of turnover in January. It'll be new people who will have to be appointed to the Region 1 Act. So create almost a whole new group of people. So that was the meeting last night. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
I just want to report that both Councilor Lewis and I had the privilege of attending the annual Oregon Zoo Foundation retreat last Thursday. It was quite a well-attended event, a nice breakfast. We went all the way through lunch, Probably the most important thing is one of the emeritus board members, board chair, actually, an emeritus chair, commented that in the past, the relationship was a little bit frayed between Metro and the Zoo Foundation, and that he felt that currently that there was a much greater coordination and sympathetic kind of working together on this thing. They noted some very nice donations and the support from some great donors. So things look fairly good from the Zoo Foundation. And if Councilor Lewis wants to add anything from that, she was sitting on the other side of the room and may have some different comments.
No, great meeting.
Great, thank you. One thing to note before we close out, there's been a lot of questions about liaison assignments and when those will be coming out. We're still working on that. This is not only a message for the counselors, but also for staff. Our Chief of Staff, Kristen Dennis, will be working on those through to the beginning of January. And there'll be discussions with you, but she's got quite a workload. And so if everybody can just take a moment and breathe and pause, we go through this every year and it takes a while to get through it. So much appreciated on all accounts. We will be getting through it, and it will happen in due time. With that, I see no more hands raised, and we can adjourn to our next regular scheduled meeting for December 8th at 10:30 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Recording stopped.